Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time, we're heading back to the Triassic period.
Oh, the Triassic.
Yeah, a time of incredible change after
Yeah.
that massive extinction event, the Permian extinction.
Great dying.
The
Yeah.
Great Dying,
Yeah.
exactly. So, picture this. The world's just starting to recover, life is slowly coming back, but things are, well, they're a little different than what we're used to today.
Different is an understatement, I think.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so, set the stage for us. What kind of crazy stuff was happening back in the Triassic?
Well, you've got the ancestors of dinosaurs starting to emerge, but they're not the big guys yet.
Right. Still gotta wait a little bit for those.
Exactly, yeah. But in the oceans, that's where things get really interesting. It's a whole different cast of characters ruling the waves.
Okay, you've got my attention. Spill the beans. What kind of creatures are we talking about here?
Well, to really understand it, we got to go back to the beginning, the early Triassic. The oceans are just starting to recover, and a group of reptiles called thalattosaurs, they're taking center stage.
Thalattosaurs. Okay, that's a new one for me. What did these guys look like?
Imagine, like, a lizard, right?
Yeah.
But with a crocodile snout
Oh, interesting.
and a big, powerful tail built for swimming.
Okay, so like a weird mashup of different reptiles, basically.
Exactly. And they were perfectly adapted to be the top predators in those early Triassic oceans.
So they were like the sharks of their day.
Yeah, pretty much. Some of them even developed adaptations for swimming in the open ocean, which is pretty incredible for such early marine reptiles.
Wow, that's fascinating. So they're thriving, they're top of the food chain.
Mhm.
Sounds like a pretty good life, right?
You'd think so, right?
Yeah.
But the early Triassic was a turbulent time. Just as the thalattosaurs were getting comfortable, boom, a series of massive volcanic eruptions.
Oh no, not volcanoes.
Yeah, big ones. And these weren't your average eruptions. We're talking about colossal events that spewed out massive amounts of greenhouse gases, causing crazy temperature swings.
So like a global warming scenario, but on a super volcanic scale.
Yeah, exactly. It's called the Smithian-Spathian boundary extinction event, and it hit the oceans hard.
Okay, this doesn't sound good for our thalattosaur friends.
No, it wasn't. Those drastic changes in the environment, the temperature swings, ocean acidification, a lot of creatures just couldn't cope.
Including, I'm guessing, the thalattosaurs.
Sadly, yes. Even though they were so successful, many of them just couldn't adapt to those rapid changes.
So it's a story of triumph and tragedy all rolled into one. They ruled the oceans, then bam, volcanoes and extinction. It's like a real-life nature documentary, but with way higher stakes.
You got it. But you know what they say when one door closes?
Another one opens.
Exactly. And in this case, the extinction of the thalattosaurs paved the way for a new group of marine reptiles to take over.
Oh, and who might these new contenders be?
Well, we've mentioned them before, the ichthyosaurs.
Ah, yes. The sleek, dolphin-like reptiles.
You got it.
They always look so graceful in those prehistoric documentaries.
They were incredibly adapted to life in the water. Streamlined bodies, powerful tails, they were built for speed and maneuverability.
So completely different from the thalattosaurs then.
Yeah, totally different approach. They were fully committed to life in the water, even giving birth to live young.
Wow, that's impressive.
Hmm.
So they basically took advantage of the chaos and carved out their own niche in the recovering oceans.
Exactly. It's a classic example of how extinctions, while devastating, can create opportunities for new life to evolve and flourish.
And that, my friends, is how evolution keeps things interesting. But I have a feeling this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the Triassic.
Oh, you have no idea. Things are about to get even more wild as we move into the Middle Triassic.
I can't wait to hear what happens next. But for now, we'll have to leave it there. Be sure to join us for part 2 of our Triassic Deep Dive, where we'll explore the rise of even more incredible creatures and another twist in this epic tale of survival. All right, we're back and ready to dive deeper into the Triassic. Last time, we left off with the ichthyosaurs kind of taking over after that big extinction event.
Yeah, the Smithian-Spathian really shook things up.
It did. So, are we going to see those ichthyosaurs just dominate throughout the rest of the Triassic? Like, is that the whole story?
Not quite, no. The Triassic, remember, it was a time of constant change. And the Middle Triassic, well, that's when things start to get really interesting in the oceans.
Okay, lay it on me. What's happening in the Middle Triassic that's so special?
So the ichthyosaurs are still around, they're doing well, but they're not the only ones anymore. We start to see this incredible diversity of marine reptiles evolving.
Like, what kind of diversity are we talking? Give me some examples.
Okay, so picture this. The shallow seas, right? Teeming with life. And in those shallows, you have these creatures called nothosaurs.
Thalattosaurs. Another one of those names I've never heard before.
Right. There are so many cool creatures from the Triassic that people just don't know about.
I'm learning a lot today, that's for sure. Okay, so Nothosaurs. What were they like?
They were really interesting, kind of like imagine a seal,
Okay, I can picture that.
but then give it a long neck, like a plesiosaur.
Wait, a seal with a long neck? That's a strange combination.
Yeah, pretty wild, right? And they also had these webbed feet, perfect for paddling through the water.
So they were adapted for both land and water, like amphibious.
We think they were mostly aquatic, using those webbed feet to navigate the shallows.
Okay, I can see that. And what were they doing in these shallow seas? What was their role in the ecosystem?
Probably ambush predators, lurking in the shallows, waiting to snatch up fish.
So like a crocodile, but with a long neck for extra reach.
Yeah, something like that. They must have been quite a sight to see, cruising through those ancient waters.
I can imagine. This is fascinating stuff. But okay, back to the ichthyosaurs for a second. If they weren't the only big players anymore, were they still doing okay in the Middle Triassic?
Yeah, for a while. But remember how we talked about the Triassic being a time of change?
Yeah, the whole world was basically shifting around, right?
Exactly. And in the Middle Triassic, one of the big changes was something called marine regression.
Marine regression, what's that?
So basically, the sea level starts to drop,
Okay.
exposing vast areas of the seafloor that were once underwater.
Oh, that doesn't sound good for creatures that, live in the water.
Yeah, it was a big problem for a lot of marine reptiles, especially those that were adapted to life in the shallow seas, like our nothosaur friends.
So they lost their habitat.
Pretty much. And on top of that, you had other environmental changes happening at the same time.
Like what kind of changes?
Well, volcanic activity was still a big factor, causing fluctuations in temperature and ocean chemistry.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, the Triassic was a bit of a roller coaster ride, environmentally speaking.
So what happened to the Nothosaurs and the ichthyosaurs during this time? Did they survive?
Well, it wasn't a great time for marine reptiles, that's for sure. This period of upheaval led to another extinction event called the Ladinian-Carnian extinction.
Another one.
Yeah.
Man, the Triassic was rough.
It was, and the Ladinian-Carnian hit marine reptiles pretty hard. The nothosaurs especially, they were really relying on those shallow coastal habitats.
And those habitats were disappearing.
Exactly, so their diversity plummeted and many lineages just vanished.
Wow, that's sad. What about the ichthyosaurs? Did they fare any better?
They were a bit more resilient. Since they were adapted to life in the open ocean, they weren't quite as affected by the shrinking of the shallow seas.
Okay, so they had a better chance.
Yeah, they were better equipped to deal with those changes, but they still saw a decline in their diversity.
So even the ocean-going ichthyosaurs felt the impact of this extinction event.
Yeah, it was a major reshuffling of the deck, so to speak. But amidst all the losses, there were some winners, too, or at least some survivors who went on to play a big role in the marine ecosystems that followed.
Okay, tell me more about these survivors. Who were they?
Well, one group in particular, the Sauropterygians, they managed to not only survive, but to diversify during this time.
Sauropterygians. That name rings a bell. Wait a minute, are these the ancestors of the plesiosaurs?
You got it. Those iconic, long-necked marine reptiles.
The ones that always look like they're about to steal someone's picnic basket.
Exactly. While the plesiosaurs themselves wouldn't really take off until the Jurassic period,
Right.
their ancestors were already making waves, so to speak, back in the Triassic.
Wow, that's amazing. So even amidst all this extinction and upheaval, the seeds of future giants were being sown.
The Triassic was all about setting the stage for the amazing diversity we see in later periods.
It really shows how resilient life is, doesn't it? Even when faced with these incredible challenges, it finds a way to adapt and evolve.
Absolutely. But we're not done with the Triassic just yet. There's one more big event we need to talk about.
Oh. What's next on our Triassic adventure?
Well, we're about to enter the late Triassic, and that's when things get even more interesting. We're talking about dinosaurs starting to emerge, the supercontinent Pangaea really breaking apart.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff.
And to top it all off, there's this dramatic event called the Carnian Pluvial Event. It completely transformed the landscapes of the Triassic.
The Carnian Pluvial Event. Okay, I'm intrigued. We got to hear more about this.
You'll have to join us for part 3 to find out what happened.
Okay, so we're in the late Triassic now.
Yeah.
And I'm ready for this Carnian Pluvial Event.
Buckle up, because it's a wild one.
All right, hit me with it. What exactly was this Carnian Pluvial Event?
Well, imagine this. You've got Pangaea, this giant supercontinent.
Right.
And big chunks of it are just deserts, right? Arid,
Well,
dry.
okay, yeah, classic desert scene.
And then suddenly the rain starts.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not talking about like a little drizzle. We're talking torrential downpours, massive floods.
Whoa, that's a big change.
And it wasn't just a one-time thing either. This went on for like millions of years.
Millions of years. Okay, that's not just a rainy day. That's like a whole rainy epoch.
Exactly. The Carnian pluvial event, it was a total climate shift.
So what caused this mega monsoon? Do scientists know?
It's still a bit of a mystery, but there are some theories.
Okay.
Volcanic activity was definitely a factor, spewing out tons of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere.
Okay, so kind of like what happened with the Smithian-Spathian extinction.
Similar idea, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you've got changes in ocean currents. Those can also play a role in global climate patterns.
Right, so a bunch of things kind of coming together to create this perfect storm, literally.
Pretty much. And the result, well, it completely reshaped the Triassic world.
Okay, I'm picturing all these deserts turning into, like, jungles or something.
You're not far off.
Yeah.
The increased rainfall led to this huge boom in plant life.
So, good news for the plants, at least.
Yeah, they were loving it. But for other creatures, it wasn't so great, especially those that were adapted to that dry desert environment.
Right, because suddenly their whole world is flipped upside down.
Exactly. They had to adapt or die, basically.
So some winners, some losers. That seems to be the theme of the Triassic.
Definitely a time of big changes and big consequences. But, this Carnian pluvial event, it wasn't all about destruction.
Oh. What else did it lead to?
Well, for one thing, it helped to create the conditions that would eventually allow dinosaurs to thrive.
Uh-huh. Okay, so we're getting to the dinosaurs finally. But I thought they were still pretty small and, not quite the dominant force they would become later on.
True, they weren't ruling the world just yet. But the Carnian pluvial event, it set the stage for their rise in a few ways.
Okay, I'm all ears. How did this rainy period help out the dinosaurs?
Well, all that rain led to, like we said, a huge increase in plant life.
Right, more food for herbivores.
Exactly. And that meant more food for the small early dinosaurs that were around at the time.
Okay, so like a buffet for the dinos.
Pretty much. And it wasn't just the food. The Carnian pluvial event also seems to have favored dinosaurs because of some of their key adaptations.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, dinosaurs had this really efficient respiratory system, kind of similar to birds.
Oh, interesting. So they could breathe better.
Exactly. And that was a big advantage in those humid, oxygen-rich environments.
Makes sense. So they could take advantage of all that extra oxygen that was around.
Yep. They were also pretty agile and fast, thanks to their lightweight bones.
So they were quick on their feet, literally.
And some scientists even think that early dinosaurs might have had feathers, which could have helped with insulation and maybe even display.
Feathers. Wow, that's amazing. I always pictured dinosaurs as being, like, scaly and reptilian.
We're learning more about dinosaurs all the time, and it turns out feathers were probably a lot more common than we used to think.
Okay, so the dinosaurs are getting a boost from this rainy period, but they weren't the only ones around, right? Who else were they sharing the stage with?
Oh, there were plenty of other interesting creatures around in the late Triassic. One group that was particularly successful was the Lystrosaurs.
Lystrosaurs. Okay, those are new to me.
They were kind of like, imagine a stocky, pig-like herbivore.
Oh, interesting.
They were actually really abundant in the early Triassic, even after the Permian extinction.
So they were survivors.
Tough cookies, those Lystrosaurs. But as the climate changed and the dinosaurs started to rise, they faced some stiff competition.
So it was like a showdown for survival between the dinosaurs and the Lystrosaurs.
In a way, yeah. But it wasn't a direct fight or anything. It was more about who could adapt best to the changing environment.
Survival of the fittest, basically.
Exactly. And in the end, the dinosaurs, they just had that edge. They were better suited to the warmer, wetter conditions of the late Triassic.
So the dinosaurs were on their way up, but they hadn't completely taken over yet, right?
Not quite. There was still one more big hurdle to overcome before the age of dinosaurs could truly begin.
Oh, another twist in the story. What happened?
Well, at the very end of the Triassic, there was another mass extinction event, the Triassic-Jurassic extinction.
Man, the Triassic really was full of ups and downs.
It was a tough time to be alive, that's for sure. But this extinction event, it was a game changer.
Okay, how so?
It wiped out a lot of the dominant land animals, including a lot of those Lystrosaurs.
So they finally met their match.
Yeah, it was a sad end for such a successful group, but their loss was the dinosaurs' gain, you could say.
Because it cleared the way for them to take over.
Exactly. The dinosaurs, They were able to survive the extinction event, and with all those other competitors out of the picture, they were poised to become the dominant land animals of the Jurassic period.
Wow, what a story. So the Triassic, it was a time of crazy changes, extinctions, and new beginnings. It really set the stage for everything that came after.
It's amazing to think that all those events, the volcanic eruptions, the climate shifts, the extinctions, they all played a role in shaping the world we know today.
It really makes you appreciate the vastness of geologic time and how even seemingly small events can have these huge ripple effects.
And who knows what other secrets are still hidden in the fossil record, waiting to be uncovered.
That's a great point. Well, listeners, that's it for our deep dive into the Triassic period. It's been a wild ride. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time for another journey through the history of life on Earth.